All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Ed Piotrowski, Chief Meteorologist here at ABC 15. I was hoping to get through this entire hurricane season and not have to see any of you on Facebook Live. I'm sure you take that the right way, but here we are. Tropical Storm Debby was a hurricane this morning at landfall just southwest of our area, came ashore in the Big Bend of Florida. It's now over land, spinning right over Georgia and Florida, and for the most part, it's going to slow down even more, now moving to the northeast at about 6 miles per hour, and the winds are down to 45 miles per hour. But because it's moving so slowly and there's this enormous amount of rain extending from the center, we are in for not one, not two, but likely 3 days of relentless downpours, bands of downpours that are going to roll through and produce very heavy rainfall, and at times even some flash flooding. We'll talk about that here. And wanted to give you the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center, and I think this tropical storm will emerge from the Georgia coast sometime early Tuesday afternoon. And once it gets over the ocean, the waters are very warm and the wind shear is going to be light, so re-strengthening is possible. And even though the National Hurricane Center doesn't explicitly show this becoming a hurricane, that is not off the table. It is a possibility, but you'll notice the center line here is right over Myrtle Beach. This landfall would still be 3 days away. And here's the deal. There's a lot of uncertainty as to where this tropical system will eventually go because the steering currents are so weak. And let me give you an idea and illustrate for you just how uncertain the forecast is. This may be the official forecast track for the National Hurricane Center, but here's a look at the spaghetti plots, all the different forecast models that we have. And so they all show it coming out over the ocean as we head through Tuesday. And then look what happens. High pressure builds in and sends it back to the west and northwest, but precisely where that is going to happen is anybody's guess. It's conceivable that it could end up in southern South Carolina or Georgia once again. It could be right over the Grand Strand, or it may sneak and head into southeastern parts of North Carolina, all toward the end of the week. So that forecast track is not etched in stone. It's important to know, though, when I show you the wind forecast, that is very uncertain because it really does depend on where that center moves across the coastline and how strong it will be at that time. But the big deal, of course, is all the rainfall that we're going to get. Let's take a look at Futurecast hour by hour starting at midnight tonight and take you into Thursday morning. Some showers out there for sure. As we head toward daybreak, showers and storms become likely. Bands of these will be moving through as we head through the morning hours, right on through lunchtime, and as we head deeper into the afternoon, more bands of very heavy rainfall. If you're going to get things done, tomorrow's the day to do it, especially in the morning hours. You'll have to deal with rain, but we shouldn't see much in the way of flooding, at least for the first half of the day. The deeper we get into the afternoon and evening, and especially on Wednesday, is when our flood risk is really going to go up. So Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, you can clearly see we've got bands of showers and storms still rolling through. As we head through the day, that's when I think we may see our most widespread and heaviest rainfall associated with Debby. Bands of very heavy rainfall that will likely produce flash flooding, and that flash flooding could be catastrophic. Easy for me to say. What I'm trying to say here is you've got to be careful. And bottom line, we don't know precisely where those heaviest bands are going to set up. And for that reason, it's impossible to say what areas are going to flood. But there's a high chance that there will be flash flooding somewhere in our area as we head through Tuesday night, definitely into Wednesday. And even Wednesday night into Thursday morning, there are still bands of very heavy rainfall rolling through the area. So how much rain are we talking about? This is not a pretty sight. We're talking 8 to 12 inches of rain over the northern parts of our viewing area. As you head farther south, closer to where the system is moving very slowly, we could see 12 to 16 inches of rain throughout much of Horry, Florence, Williamsburg, and Georgetown counties. And it's conceivable from Georgetown southward that you could eclipse 20 inches, although the best chance of that is definitely down toward Charleston. But this kind of rain is certainly going to produce some flooding. There's no question about that. In fact, the flood risk is extreme. Doesn't mean everybody is going to flood. It just means there's a high risk of, extreme risk of actual flash flooding at some point, especially Tuesday night into Wednesday night, perhaps into Thursday as well. The farther west you go, the risk of flooding goes down to the point where it's non-existent as you get west of Charlotte. So again, rain is the big deal with this system. Now, I want to show you this. A lot of people have been asking us, how does this compare to the other big flood events that we've had? And if you've lived here for a while, you know we've had some very big flood events. A lot of you remember the Great Flood of 2015. Everybody remembers Hurricane Matthew in 2016 and Florence in 2018. 2015, these are the footprints of the heavy rainfall. So everything in yellow, that's where the heaviest of the rain fell in 2015. With Hurricane Matthew in 2016, all this red you see here that encompasses our entire area. Then with Hurricane Florence, over a foot of rain, even 2 feet of rain in a few areas. Most of that rain fell over our northern counties. And of course, a lot of our rivers are up here as well. So all that water drains into the rivers, heads toward Winyah Bay and just backs up. And we had tremendous flooding, historic and catastrophic flooding on many of our rivers. The footprint for Debby is likely going to be over here in the blue, basically south and east of Interstate 95 into the low country. So it's impossible to actually compare all of these. The good news is our rivers are not nearly as high as they were when Hurricane Matthew came through. And even though we've had significant rainfall on and off here for the past couple of weeks, we're not as wet as we were when Hurricane Matthew came through. And of course, as I just mentioned with Hurricane Florence, so much rain up here, nearly 2 to 3 feet in a few areas, and that all head to head to the south and east. So yes, there will be flooding. I'm just hoping that our rivers will not get to those levels like they did with Matthew in 16 and of course Florence in 2018. Can't guarantee that, so you need to be vigilant and be safe as we head through the next 2 to 3 days and likely beyond that. Now, the most uncertain part of the forecast is the wind and surge forecast, because that ultimately depends on where the center crosses the coastline and how strong it is. So here's my first shot at giving you the wind forecast. Right now, most areas inland, 25 to 35 miles per hour. That would be later Thursday into Thursday night into early Friday. Between now and then, some gusts 20 to 30, really no big deal. Right along the immediate coast, we could have wind gusts over 40 miles per hour. And a reminder, if the center comes close to us and the system is stronger, these wind numbers will actually be going up. And what concerns me here is the highest wind doesn't arrive until after we've had most of the rainfall. So we get 2 days of soaking rain, and that of course loosens the soil, and you get wind on top of that. It's capable of knocking down trees a lot easier than if the ground was dry and hard. So we're gonna have to watch for that depending on the winds as we head through Friday. Not to say that it's going to be a repeat of Hurricane Matthew where we had all that rain and then all the wind after that. That's something we're going to watch. And of course, power outages will be possible, especially if the winds are higher than what we're projected here. Now, about the storm surge, well, tornado risk first of all. There is a low tornado risk tonight, overnight, for much of our southern counties. But once the tropical storm moves further east, it takes the instability with it. So for much of the daytime tomorrow, does not look like we're going to have a risk. But into Wednesday and Thursday, as the system does get closer to us, there is a low risk of a tornado right along the immediate coast. Now talk about the storm surge. Again, highly dependent on where the center goes, if it's coming across the coastline at high tide, and precisely how strong the system is going to be. As of right now, those stiff easterly winds may produce some minor coastal flooding tomorrow and Wednesday, but a storm surge of 2 to 4 feet, that's the official forecast right now, is possible sometime Thursday, Thursday night, or Friday. And again, that all depends on the track. And do keep this in mind. This is the forecast for now. If the system happens to be stronger, that storm surge could be higher. If the center crosses north of us or farther to the south, that number would stay the same or actually go down. So quite a few unknowns at this point in time, but I want to describe what possibilities there were out there with Tropical Storm Debby. Easy for me to say, right? So that's kind of everything I had to tell you. Jenna Warner is here as well. She's monitoring your questions. So now's the time, if you have any questions, to go ahead and ask them. Jenna's going to give us some of those questions. So hopefully, no one's asking about airlines and businesses, but I have a feeling there might be a few of those in there. I can't help you with airlines. Airlines make those decisions, businesses as well. They're not consulting me when it comes to whether or not they should close, so make sure you check with your airlines and businesses to find out if the flights are canceled, or of course you've got issues with your workplace. So, all right, Jenna, what do we got?
All right, well, there haven't been too many questions, but the main question I'm seeing often is, for those on vacation, advice and such, when to leave versus when to stay.
First of all, I am not going to make that decision for you. That's a personal decision. You've got to understand the risk that you have, and then you have to decide, do I stay or do I go? I'll tell you this, tomorrow's not a bad day overall. As you get into Wednesday and Thursday, the risk does go up for flooding. And then, of course, you may have to deal with some wind as we head toward Thursday and Friday. Now, a lot of people have been asking me as well, is it safe to come to Myrtle Beach this weekend once the tropical system is gone? I hope so, but we don't know what the state of the area is going to be like at that point in time. Are we going to have excessive flooding that's lingering? Are there going to be any roads washed out? Those are questions we can't answer right now until we see how things unfold and see what happens over the next 3 or 4 days. Hopefully we don't have many issues, but it takes a while to assess all that once the tropical system has moved on. So you'll just have to decide on your own what you think is best for you and your family.
All right, next question. People are asking about Black Creek and Little PD rivers. We'll throw in the Lumber River and the Waccamaw River while we're at it. What's expected with those? There
are forecasts out there already of how high the rivers will go, but I wouldn't put any stock in those right now because we don't know how much rain precisely is going to fall over the river basins in particular. But there's a good chance that there's going to be moderate to at least moderate, likely major flooding on the Waccamaw, the Little PD, and of course the Black River, and perhaps the Lynch's River and Black Creek, and the Lumber River as well, although the highest amounts of rain should be just south of Lumberton. Not to say you may not get a foot of rain, but the really high amount should be south of there. So again, it's one of those things we'll have to see how things play out. As you well know, we have the initial shot of very heavy rainfall that produces flash flooding, and that can be a life-threatening situation. And then you've got the long-term aspect of this, where it takes forever for the rivers to come up and crest and then eventually go down again. So that's the long-term threat that we've got to think about. And as a lot of you know, when our rivers flood here, sometimes it can take more than a month for them to actually get back into their banks and back to normal stages. Hopefully that won't be the case, but it's something we need to prepare for.
All right, the next question that I'm seeing a decent amount, will there be dry time between all the days of rain?
Yeah, and it's not going to rain continuously the entire time. There'll be breaks in between those heavy downpours. And depending on if we can get some really good breaks, maybe there's some sunshine as well, but you certainly don't want to be on the beaches, or at least in the water anyway, with those very high waves and very rough surf, thanks to that onshore wind. It's just not going to be good beach weather. If you've not already come here, I would not travel here tomorrow night, Wednesday, or Thursday because of the real possibility of significant, perhaps even life-threatening flooding in parts of our area.
All right, moving on, we have questions about power outages in the Western PD and Western Border Belt. Since they are far from the coast, are they safe?
Right. You never know. I mean, if you get strong enough wind gust or heavy enough rain, you can get power outages. I would think that the better chance of seeing more widespread power outages, which is not a lock, would be closer to the coast. And it, again, really depends on how stiff the winds eventually get as Debby either moves ashore or passes us to the north or south.
Okay. We are also having a lot of questions about Debby's emergence into the Atlantic and possibly re-strengthening.
So that is a real possibility. Let's be honest about that. That low pressure still has a very well-defined circulation. It moves over the very warm waters of the Gulf Stream, the Western Atlantic. Water temperatures near shore have been running around 86, 87. They have backed off a little bit to around 82 to 84 in many areas, but you've got prime fuel there. Now, if you have very little wind aloft or no wind shear, then that just allows those tropical systems to vent, and when that happens, they can strengthen. And the Hurricane Center is at least calling for some strengthening. Notice it came off the coast as a 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. They do have it coming ashore, technically right now on the Grand Strand, as a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. But again, that track is probably going to change. And for better or worse, the numbers may go up or down when it comes to the strength of the system. So a low-end Category 1 is not out of the question. In other words, a 75-mile-per-hour hurricane coming ashore is not out of the question somewhere.
All right, bouncing off of that a little bit, is there a chance that the system stalls completely over us?
I don't see it stalling completely over us. There are some scenarios that show it getting into the Atlantic Ocean, then backing up towards Savannah and Charleston, and stalling over land there before the next front comes in, captures it, and eventually accelerates it to the north and east. But anytime you have extremely slow steering currents, anything is possible. So we'll just have to be vigilant, and as we get new information or see how things are unfolding, we'll of course pass those along to you.
At what time, or is it possible that the Grand Strand is placed under a storm warning?
So tropical storm watches are issued, and that's what we're in right now, when tropical storm conditions, 40-mile-per-hour winds or higher, are possible within 48 hours. So that would suggest the very earliest that we would see a tropical storm force wind around here is Wednesday night. It's more likely going to be Thursday if we see that, but that's at least 48 hours in advance. It will go to a warning once the Hurricane Center thinks it's very possible that we could get tropical storm force winds within 36 hours. So warning means, hey, it's coming. A watch is, let's keep an eye on things and see how things progress. And we are under a storm surge watch as well. As I mentioned, 2 to 4 feet is possible.
All right.
Anything else?
Moving on, we have plenty of questions.
Oh boy.
When will Debby leave, and when will the rain likely stop?
So there will still be showers and some storms through the weekend, but your typical summertime showers and storms. I think Tuesday, Wednesday, very high chances of rain. Same for Thursday. Friday, things should be getting better because the storm will begin to move north of us. So we may salvage Friday afternoon. Then the question is what are we cleaning up, or what are we having to repair if there's damage to roads or something along those lines? So time will tell. That's the way it looks right now. If this thing happens to stall south of us, it could be the weekend before it's out of here. A lot of unknowns for sure with very weak steering currents. Two of our best models, the GFS model and the European model. The European has it looping out over the ocean, then coming ashore near or just north of Myrtle Beach. The GFS model, which actually has done a better job with Debby so far, it showed it developing at first southwest of Florida, while the European had it developing in the Bahamas. We know that didn't happen. Anyway, the GFS consistently has shown it backing up and going directly back towards Savannah and Charleston, then eventually looping through the Midlands of South Carolina and out to sea over the weekend and early next week. So you can see we are looking at these models, and they are literally all over the place right now. Even the Hurricane Center has said the forecast beyond tonight through tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, is highly uncertain. And for those guys and gals to do that, that's a big deal.
Okay, moving on. Quite a few people want to know the comparison that this storm has to Hurricane Ian in 2022.
So this one, Ian was, I know the way it looks, the way it loops, it's similar, but Ian was a very quickly fading hurricane. In fact, the Hurricane Center issued its last advisory right after landfall. But because it was a perpendicular hit with 70 to 75-mile-per-hour winds, it produced a pretty big storm surge on the south end of the Grand Strand. This system, at least for now, because it's going to be fairly weak when it makes it over the ocean, it doesn't look like the storm surge will be as high. But again, it really depends on how much it strengthens before it comes ashore somewhere. So we'll see if it actually compares to Ian or not. The official forecast from the National Hurricane Center right now suggests it won't be as high as it was with Ian.
All right, moving on. So are there any watches or warnings right now inland, not near the coast?
No, none inland right now. I know we have a flood watch in effect, and that to be expected. Flood watches are up for the foreseeable future, just letting you know that flooding is a real possibility.
All right, at what rate could the intracoastal flood?
I honestly don't know that. That has everything to do with how much rain falls over the various rivers. When they all come down into Winyah Bay, how much does it back up the intracoastal or the Waccamaw River? As I said before, there's River Forecast Center is making forecasts already, but I guarantee you, based on my experience with all the other hurricanes, it's going to change tremendously as we move forward and rain begins to fall in the area. So don't take it as gospel truth right now. Let's see how things unfold over the next several days.
In the tropics, are there any storms that we're worried about after Debby?
There is a disturbance. It's located in the Lesser Antilles. It's going to cruise across the Caribbean. It's got a 30% chance of developing. It may head toward the Yucatan. If it even develops, it probably wouldn't do so until the Gulf of Mexico, so it is not a worry to us at all. So no issues elsewhere in the tropics for now.
Okay, evacuations. People are wondering if there are any in place right now.
There are no evacuations, and evacuations are not going to be issued for our area. For those of you who've been here a long time, you know this, but for those of you that are relatively new, the only reason evacuations are ordered is because of the real possibility of the storm surge getting to where you are. Has nothing to do with rainfall, nothing to do with wind or the tornado threat. Again, evacuations are only issued if there's a real possibility of a big enough storm surge getting to where you are. So that is simply not going to be the case from everything that we have heard from emergency management and the governor for that matter.
All right, is there a chance that this storm goes out to sea and doesn't see us ever again?
I mean, there's that small chance because the steering currents are so weak that it kind of slips out over the ocean and just keeps on going. Right now, that seems like a very low possibility.
All right, how often will our team be giving updates on this?
So we're constantly updating you on social media, on our webpage. Go to WPDE.com/weather. Look for our blog that's constantly being updated. Our folks in news are always working on the stories to help you get prepared. You can go to our webpage for that as well. I'm posting a lot of things on my Facebook page. We will do Facebook Lives every single night at 8 o'clock until the threat has passed, and perhaps even another one earlier in the day if necessary. And of course, if it gets to be pretty nasty out there and we need to, we will be live on ABC 15 continuously until the threat is over. There's one thing you can count on. We are not going to leave you hanging. We'll have your back for sure.
Okay, we have a few more. Could this storm move faster than the forecast is saying?
Very unlikely because we already see it slowing down, and you can actually look at various types of satellites like water vapor imagery. You can look at forecast models and know that it's in the process of slowing down. Maybe 1 or 2 mile difference, but we're not going to see it all of a sudden accelerate out to the north and east. That's just not going to happen.
Has there been a storm like Debby with this much uncertainty before?
Every single hurricane, almost every single one, there are going to be nuances. I was talking to a buddy of mine who works up in Wilmington, John Evans, and it's one of those situations that when you're talking about a hurricane, it's really what's going to go wrong, because something is going to go wrong. There's always something that pops up and it surprises you with hurricanes. So that's why, especially in situations like this with very slow steering currents, we always want to give you our best idea of what's going to happen, but also alert you to the other possibilities so that you're not surprised by that and you have it in the back of your mind.
Okay, we have a few people asking about tornadoes, how that occurs in a tropical system, and what to look out for.
So usually in a tropical system, the northeast quadrant or the front right quadrant of the storm is where you maximize spin and instability. So you have a lot of spin in a hurricane, but if you get enough instability, that air rises, and when the air rises, it can actually create a tornado. Air kind of spins this way, and then the updraft kind of allows it to do this. So if you look at the tropical system right now, and you kind of just drew a vertical and a horizontal line, we're to the northeast of that center right now, and there's enough instability coming in off the ocean that a tornado is not completely out of the question. Because it moves more easterly as we head through tomorrow, the axis is mostly offshore, so it's very unlikely that we would see a tornado at all tomorrow. But then as the system begins to back to the west again, that reintroduces the risk of a brief tornado near the coast.
All right, I think this is the last question, unless something else grabs my attention in chat. So king tides versus the high tides, is that a factor in this flooding with Debby?
Thankfully, we don't have king tides going on right now. We are near a new moon, which will help to raise the tides a bit, but we don't have a new moon. Again, it all is going to depend on where that center goes as we head through Thursday and Friday as to whether or not we have a little storm surge or a much larger storm surge. So it's one of those things we'll keep an eye on as we head through the next several days.
All right, well, every question now being asked in chat has been answered. You should be able to go back and view this live once we wrap up. But yes. Ed, anything else that you want to add?
That is it, folks. Just please take this seriously. This is a potential catastrophe for some locations to get relentless rainfall and flooding. That's most likely as you head down toward the low country of South Carolina, but it is certainly possible here as well because of the amounts of rain that are falling. Please be safe, err on the side of caution if you don't have to be out and about for the middle and latter part of this week, and I know that's a tough thing to say. Try to stay indoors as much as you can, and remember, don't try to cross any roads that are covered in water. It only takes 6 inches of fast moving water to float your car. And I can't tell you how many people, 80 to 85% of people who die in a hurricane, it's not from the wind, it's not from the storm surge, it's not from tornadoes, it's literally from flooding rainfall. So you got to keep that in mind when it comes to the threats from hurricanes. That is the #1 killer, is freshwater flooding. All right. I hope you guys all stay safe. We'll have another update for you at 11 o'clock on ABC 15 WPDE. And of course, we'll be updating you all day long. And for the rest of the week, excuse me, rest well, and we'll see you soon.